Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's Alertus Power Lunch, Configuration and Capabilities of Wi-Fi and Hardwired Panic Buttons. In this interactive session, we'll deep dive into management and configuration of both Wi-Fi panic buttons and hardwired activation buttons. We will cover the unique features and essential configuration steps for each device, and additionally, we'll discuss how to enable test mode for reliable panic button testing without activating a live alert. So my name, of course, is Brooke, and I'm joined here today by Sarah, who will be leading this session. So please remember that this is an interactive session, and you can use the Q&A feature to put any questions in. And also, please be aware that this session is being recorded for training purposes. All right, Sarah, throwing it your way to get started.
Awesome. That sounds good. So actually, before I share my screen this time, I wanted to start by showing off the Wi-Fi panic button, which I have here. It is a very intuitive to use device. So you can see here, if you open it up, it's got a big red activate button that would actually activate an alert. And then it does also have this yellow test button that you can use just to test the connection. So it's very intuitive to use. It's small and compact, can be carried on a person or on a lanyard so that your employees or staff do have a way to very quickly request help if needed. And you can configure the buttons to send whatever type of notification that you'd like whenever the activate button is pressed. I know a lot of schools will have it set up to use or to initiate like a lockdown alert, but the configuration is definitely up to you. And it can work with existing Wi-Fi networks and come configured for your network to sort of ease the process of getting it working and minimize installation costs as well. But if you do open up the button and you press the test button, there will be some LEDs that you can check to monitor the status of the button. So if I do press test, I'll see it first blinking white, then yellow, and then hopefully you can see it blinking green here. So that's what you want to see. That blinking green indicates that the connection was successful for the network and the server. So this button is connected and will work. If you did ever press the test button and you notice a red LED, that might just indicate that the button hasn't been set up yet or there's some sort of configuration issue. So that would definitely be worth taking a look into. But I am also going to go ahead and press the red activate button now to show you what it would look like when the button does initiate an alert. So I am going to press activate now, and we can see the same LED pattern. So it'll be white, then yellow, then we'll blink green to let us know that the activation was successful. And now we can see that activate button did initiate an alert. So here I can see my alert beacons going off behind me. I can see the message on the marquee. And then I am also going to go ahead and share my screen now as well, since I do also have my button set up to send out desktop notifications to an emergency response team. So they'll get something that looks like this telling them that the button was pressed. It'll pull in some information about who pressed the button, their contact information, their address, and then I can also see on a map here, I'm at the Baltimore Alertus office, and I can see on this map exactly where I was when that button was pressed. So that's kind of a rundown of how things will look and work, but I do also want to take a look into the Alertus console to give you some more information about how I configured all of that. So I am going to go ahead and just cancel this active alert going off behind me, and then we'll take a look at some Wi-Fi panic button information in the console. So whenever a panic button, like a Wi-Fi panic button, is pressed, you'll be able to see that being processed in your event dashboard. So if I open up this dashboard section here and click into the event dashboard, this will give me a list of all the events that have come in and been processed by my system. So I'll be able to see some panic button presses showing up here. And then if I scroll down, I can see each specific event. So here is where I just pressed that Wi-Fi panic button. I can see the time that it was processed. I can also see the processing details, so I can see how my system processed that event and what alert was sent out. I can also see the MAC address for my button that was pressed. Each Wi-Fi panic button will have a unique MAC address printed on the back. And then you can also assign each button to a contact, and I'll be able to see that contact showing up here as well, so I can tell who pressed the button. And if you want to get all the information available, you can also click this magnifying glass to view additional details of the event. So again, you'll see it on the map here, and then you can scroll down to see all of the specific information that the system was able to collect from that event. So I have a ton of information here, like the address. I even have latitude and longitude values, IP address. So there's a lot of good information here for sure. And if we go back to the event dashboard, the way that I was able to tell my system what I want it to do when the Wi-Fi panic buttons are pressed is by creating what's called a custom event trigger to say, if this happens, if a button is pressed, I want the system to do this specific thing or send out this alert. And I can see the custom event trigger that I created for my Wi-Fi panic button. It's this one here, number 19. And I can just click the link in the dashboard there to go directly to that specific custom event trigger. But you can also access all of your custom event triggers on this left-hand side navigation bar under Configure System. There is a page here called Custom Event Triggers where you go to create new ones and also edit existing ones. But if I scroll down here, I'll show you how this was set up. So I first just gave it a name and a description to tell me what it's for. And then I have enabled turned on, and that just means that the trigger is active. So if something happens that matches the criteria, it will actually take the events that I've specified. And I do have stop processing turned on as well. Typically, we do recommend having stop processing turned on. That just means that if an event like a panic button press matches this custom event trigger, the system's not going to keep looking for other triggers that it matched as well. It'll just take these actions and then stop. And then the next section here is the events and criteria. So this is where I was able to specify the specific criteria that need to be met for an action to happen. So you could keep it super general. Something that's going to be true for all Wi-Fi panic button presses is this client name value. So the client name is always going to equal Wi-Fi panic button if the Wi-Fi panic button is the device that was pressed. And I can see that in this event dashboard. I can see this criteria here. So for the client name, for example, here's where I pulled that Wi-Fi panic button value. So all of these values could be used as you're creating your custom event triggers. And I decided to make mine really specific. So it doesn't just have to be any Wi-Fi panic button. I said that the MAC address has to equal this value, which is the value for my Wi-Fi panic button, just so that when we're doing trainings, if I press my button, I'm not going to send an alert to Brooke or to anyone else. But if you don't want it to be specific to each button, you could also add other criteria. For example, you could add something based on a group membership or location membership. So I could say if the group membership or location membership equals, say, building 1. So if it's a button that's pressed in building 1, then it's going to send an alert out to people in building 1. So you can get as specific as you want to tell the system what criteria you're looking for, and then when that's met, your system will take the actions that you have specified here. So in this example, I am sending out a preset alert that I created for my Wi-Fi panic button presses. There are also some other actions that you could add as well. For example, if you also wanted an email to be sent, or when you're testing, you want it to ignore the press until you have a preset set up for it, you can use any of these options as well. But for this preset alert here that I created, I can click edit just to go directly to that page, and I'll show you how I built out this preset alert. Again, this is for my Wi-Fi panic button, and I was able to compose the message here that you hopefully saw on the LED marquee. And in the message, I was also able to pull in a number of these variables here. So I was able to include the name of the person that pressed the button. I was able to include the location, the BSS ID value, and also my contact information by using those variables. I was able to add them just by clicking variables, coming into event variables, and picking a panic button activation as the type. Specifically, it was a Wi-Fi panic button. And then I was able to pull in the BSSID or the contact information. Any of these variables you can just add directly into the message so that your first responders will know exactly who pressed the button, how to contact them, and where they're located. And then the rest of these settings look very similar to any other preset alert, where you can specify the duration and priority for the alert. You can also determine the alert services or the delivery methods that are used. So in my example, when a button is pressed, it will send out that desktop notification, and also it will activate my alert beacons. But if I also wanted a Wi-Fi panic button press to activate a mobile notification to alert aware or to activate my text-to-speech speakers, I could pull in other delivery methods so I can have it go to whatever devices I'd like. And then finally, you can also specify the recipients for that alert. So just in this example, I have it going out to my building one group, but I have seen in a lot of cases, people will create like a first responder or emergency management group and have a button press just go to those specific people. So they'll get that notification first. They can reach out to the person that pressed it and then determine if they want to activate a system-wide alert. So not only do you have control over how the message goes out when a button is pressed, but you have a lot of control over who it goes out to as well. So that is how to set up the configuration for the Wi-Fi panic buttons. And then I did also want to quickly highlight another page in the Alertus console down here, this Wi-Fi panic buttons page. And this is where you'll be able to get a lot of helpful information to monitor the status of your buttons. So you'll be able to see here if any are reporting a low battery. You can also see if any are inactive or offline, or if they are online and active. Like I can tell, for example, Brooke hasn't used her Wi-Fi panic button in trainings lately, so she probably needs to charge it since the battery's at 0. But this would be a helpful thing to keep an eye on just to make sure all your buttons are connected. And this is also where you'd come if you want to assign a contact to the button to identify the person that it belongs to. And you can also assign a default location as well. And then finally, you'll also be able to see any Wi-Fi panic button events. So anytime there is an activation or someone presses the test button, you'll also be able to see that showing up on this page along with the contact and the MAC address for that specific button. But that was a lot of information about Wi-Fi panic buttons. But I do also want to pivot over to the hardwired activation buttons, which are another option for activating alerts from a panic button. So I will just stop sharing my screen quickly again. Hopefully you all can see in the background here, but I do have several hardwired activation buttons on this board behind me. And my buttons are connected to my alert beacons. Each alert beacon has 2 input ports, so it can support up to 2 different panic button configurations. But you could also use panic buttons with other Alertus devices like an IP relay, an HPSA, or also a text-to-speech device. Those also have input ports that can be used with panic buttons. But just to show you an example, I'm going to press this panic button back here that says evacuate. I have this configured to send out an evacuation order for a fire in building 1. But if I do open up this cover here and press the button, I can see on the alert beacon that a panic button press was detected. And then again, we will be able to see the alert going off behind me. I have that also set up to send a mobile notification with alert aware, so I got that. And then I'm also getting a desktop alert, which we can't see because I stopped sharing my screen, but it did pop up on my desktop as well. So I can see the alert went off, it was successful, and then I am going to also share my screen again so that we can take a look at how that was configured. But before we do that, I am just going to go ahead and cancel this active alert to stop the devices behind me from going off. And then I will also just go ahead and re-twist this button back so that it is ready to be pressed again by the next person. So similarly to the Wi-Fi panic buttons, whenever a hardwired activation button is pressed, it will also generate an event in the event dashboard, which we can take a look at here. So if I scroll down, now this most recent panic button activation was the one for that hardwired button. I can also see the time that it was processed, as well as the processing details. And then this time, instead of getting a MAC address like we did for the Wi-Fi panic button, I'll be able to see the name of the device that the button was connected to. So in this example, it is that yellow alert beacon on our training wall. And if we look at the device settings for that yellow alert beacon, which I can show you under Configure System, if I open up this Alert Devices page, here is the yellow alert beacon that the button is connected to. So when I was setting up this alert beacon device, I did come to the advanced settings here, and here is where I let the system know that I do have panic button number 1 and panic button number 2 connected to each of the inputs. And this panic button configuration number is something that I can use in my custom event trigger to specify exactly what actions I want to happen. So if I go back to the event dashboard here, we can also take a look at that custom event trigger for the hardwired button just by clicking the link here to go directly to it. Or again, I could also access my custom event triggers from the custom event triggers page down here. But this is the one for that evacuate button. It is a panic button activation, but this time coming from an alert beacon. And here is where I have that panic button configuration as the criteria. So the panic button configuration number needs to equal 1, and that matches what I assigned to that button in the first input port. So I know this is when the evacuate button is pressed, not when the other active threat button is pressed. And again, if you did want to get more specific, you can. For example, if you have a lot of alert beacons in different buildings, you could add a criteria again for a location or group membership. I could say, for example, it needs to be panic button configuration number 1, and the alert beacon needs to belong to the building 1 group as well. So again, you can get super specific with the criteria to identify all your specific buttons. And then when that criteria is met, the system will take the actions that you have specified here. So again, I just have it sending out a preset alert, this time for a fire in building 1, and I can click edit if I wanted to go directly to that preset alert to show you how it's built out. And here's just kind of a standard preset alert letting us know about the evacuation order. You can see this time I have some additional alert services. So in addition to activating the desktops and the alert beacons, like when the Wi-Fi button was pressed, I also have that hardwired activation going out to AlertAware for mobile and also activating my text-to-speech devices. So again, you can control when the button is pressed, how the message goes out, and then again, you can specify who it's going to. I have that notice just going to my building 1 group since it's for a fire in building 1, but I could also just activate all devices on my system or pick individual units as well. So you have a ton of options for the alert settings as well. And then the last thing I did want to highlight regarding these buttons is some best practices or recommendations for testing them. So I am just going to close out of some of these extra tabs here. And then one thing that is super helpful for testing your buttons is putting the system into test mode so that you can press one of your buttons and you can tell how the system processes it without actually sending out any active alerts. So let's say I want to test and make sure that evacuate button is connected and working, but I don't actually want to send out that evacuation order for building 1. What I could do is open up the configure system section here and then come down to this custom event triggers page. Again, this is where you are able to add and edit all those different custom event triggers for different buttons or other events. But there is also a spot on the page here where you can enable test mode. So I am going to click this to enable test mode, say OK, and then it will become very obvious that the system is in test mode. I can see the red border here saying that test mode is enabled. So it is very clear that I'm in test mode. And I will also see another system error generated here. If you notice, this will also let you know that custom event triggers are in test mode. So it's telling me that no alerts or actions will happen from those events. So now that I am in test mode, I'm just going to come back and press this evacuate button again. And when I press the button, I do still see the alert beacon telling me that the panic button press was detected, but as we can see, there is no active alert that was generated. And it would work the same with the Wi-Fi panic button. I could also press the activate button on the Wi-Fi panic button now. And again, I am not going to see any alert or anything going out as well. But even though I didn't activate anything, I can still see how those panic button presses were processed. If I go back into this event dashboard, then I'll be able to see down here where I did press the hardwired button on the training wall. And then I can also see this event here where I pressed my Wi-Fi panic button, but both of those happened while the system was in test mode. So I'll see this prefix here saying that test mode was enabled, but it will still tell me the custom event trigger that it matched, which is the correct one for each button. And then it will also tell me the preset alert that it would have activated, which is the correct alert that I'd want to be sent out. So again, that's a super helpful way. You can make sure everything is connected and configured correctly without having to actually activate any alerts in your system. And as always, once you're done testing, I do recommend coming back to that configure system section, opening up that custom event triggers page, and then coming here to disable test mode. So now these custom event triggers are back to being live. So if now a button was pressed, it would actually activate the alert like you'd want during an emergency. But I believe that was everything I had on the agenda to share today regarding those buttons. So I am going to pass it back over to Brooke to share some additional resources and then also save time if there are any questions as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Sarah. So I'm going to put the user guide for the Wi-Fi panic button in the chat, as well as pulling up the configuration guide for the hardwired panic button. So you have those two resources available to you. I don't see any questions coming in the chat, but we will stay on the call for another minute or so. So please feel free to put some in if you have any. We also have some announcements for our power lunches. So next week with Memorial Day weekend, we are not going to be having a power lunch on Friday. So the next power lunch is actually going to be on May 29th. And it's going to be our testing series. So it's going to start off with part one of our 3 levels of testing, where we'll go over test mode. Sarah covered it today a little bit already, which is great, but we'll go over that again, as well as silent test. And then the second part will be the following week, where we'll go over the audible test. So if you are interested in registering for that, please feel free to click on that Zoom link. And if you have any other questions as we are sitting here in our power lunch, we'd love to hear from you. If not, have a great rest of your weekend, and thank you so much for coming.